Do you know the road to Jerusalem? Does your heart ever long to go where the Son of David's lamp burns bright and the waters of life ever flow? Oh, the gates of Jerusalem, holy city which bears the name. Rejoice, O daughter of Zion, your King bears the name salvation. Do you know the road to Jerusalem? Does your heart long to walk her streets, where the golden paths lead to the Lamb, our Messiah, the Prince of Peace? Oh, the gates of Jerusalem, holy city which bears the name. Rejoice, O daughter of Zion, your King bears the name salvation. City which bears the name. Rejoice, O daughter of Zion, your King bears the name salvation. Oh, the gates of Jerusalem, holy city which bears the name. Your King bears the name salvation. The name of the Lord is salvation. Hashem Adonai, Yeshua.
Well, welcome everyone. Good that you can join us on this second in the series. Fantastic to have you along again. And obviously, I'm not sure. Aaron was going to probably update me. Hopefully, it's not raining today. It's looking more promising as I see his video there. So, Aaron, hopefully you can unmute yourself there. And it's looking a lot finer today. Is that fair to say? Excellent. Well, yes. Sorry. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of clouds in the sky. There was a lot of rain earlier and during the night, but right now we're good. We're good to go. No umbrella.
Praise the Lord. Well, we were praying for good weather, so the Lord has provided. Thank you, Lord. Now, just as a reminder, before we start, you are muted for this part, but we will unmute for the question and answers at the end. So keep that in mind. And so today, Aaron's going to be showing us around the Dung Gate, which is hopefully a lot better than it sounds. Now, he's also navigating a new camera, so that should be interesting. At the moment, you're sideways, so I'm not sure whether you've got it on auto-rotate there, Aaron. So hopefully we can figure this all out. But anyway, it's good to have you again, brother. And so I'm going to hand over to you. Good morning, shalom, and hope you're well.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, good morning here, good evening there. Shalom from Jerusalem, from the old city of Jerusalem. I'm standing here outside of one of the gates. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so far the weather is holding up, and it's great to be with you again for our second tour. It's cold. You know, we do have winter here. Some people think that just because we're like in the land of Mesopotamia, where we have a lot of desert, that there's no cold weather or rain, but it does get very cold. In fact, usually every year, at least one day a year, we have snow, and that's always exciting in Jerusalem. Usually it's like a slither, but up in the north, we actually have our highest mountain, Mount Hermon, which is actually a famous ski resort. So lots of snow up there. And there is actually right now a lot of snow up there. But we're talking about Jerusalem today, and we're talking about one of the gates. Last tour, we did Herod's Gate, one of the 8 gates, and today we're doing the Dung Gate. Now, the word dung, probably a better word, it would be the garbage or rubbish gate, because it was here that they took the garbage out from the old city. Now, what kind of garbage? It's not just any garbage. It's quite special garbage, because behind me, on the other side of these walls, which is inside of the city, is the Temple Mount. And that's the place where the first and the second temples stood. Now, if Nigel has a picture there, we can give you a kind of an overview of what we're talking about.
Just give me a second. Yeah, I'll pull it up for you. Just give me a second.
Okay, here. Literally from where I'm standing, 200 meters away, 300 meters away, were the temples. The Temple of Solomon, the rebuilt Temple of Zerubbabel, and Herod's Temple. And I'm going to try and zoom in myself. Yeah. So this picture here, I am basically, there's the southern wall. Now, let me actually, basically, there's the Temple Mount, that kind of square rectangle mount of wall. And that is the second temple that Herod built. And as I say, I'm about 250, 300 meters from that particular place. And the houses that come down, that's where I'm standing here. That was called the City of David, the City of David. So we're talking 3,000 years ago. Thanks for that, Nigel. That's probably going to be enough for now. So we're talking about 3,000 years ago, when King David came up to Jerusalem. His capital was in Hebron, which is about 25 miles, 40 kilometers from here. And he came up to Jerusalem, and he made Jerusalem his capital after he captured it from the Jebusites. When he captured it, he called it the City of David, not to be confused with Bethlehem, which is also called the City of David, because that's where David was born. And he moved his capital here, unifying the 12 tribes. And over the last 50 years or so, our archaeologists have unearthed a massive amount of artifacts and stones and buildings. Let me give you an example. As we look down here, this is the most excavated site in the country, and it just never stops. There is a massive excavation going on right now as we talk down here. We found remains of King David's palace, and we haven't got time to go into it today, but there's good proof why that is. Coins, glass, arrowheads, figurines, all kinds of amulets that have been found, and it just never stops. So this is called the City of David, friends. This is where David built his palace. As I mentioned, it looks like it's been found. And of course, we know the story where he was walking on the rooftop, looking down into a valley, and he saw Bathsheba. Now, the other thing he did, let me turn my camera around to where we basically started, and that was the Temple Mount area, which is on the other side of this wall. And what it says is he purchased the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite for 50 shekels. And that's really a very important historical document. We call it the Bible, but it's actually an ancient document that proves that he purchased. In those days, conquering kings, they didn't purchase, they took. But he said, I will not take anything that does not cost me. And so he purchases that threshing floor. And that actual site is Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah, where his great-great-grandfather Abraham offered up his son Isaac on that place. Now, it has a number of different names, this area. The City of David, the Ophel, Mount Moriah, Zion. This is also called Zion. If you look in 2 Samuel 5, it says David captured the stronghold of Zion. And about 30 years later, his son Solomon builds the first temple right on that site. So these are part of the surrounding area. There's so much to talk about. I mean, we're only really beginning and scratching the surface, but I want to take your focus now to this here, and this is really where I've just walked through this gate here. I'm now inside of the walls, and this is one of the 8 gates, and it's called the Dung Gate. And as I say, they took out the garbage, they took out the dung from here. And what did I mean? It wasn't just any kind of garbage, it was special garbage. Well, what it was, ladies and gentlemen, is from the temple, they actually had gutters. We found these gutterings where the blood would flow down, the blood from the sacrifices up on the Temple Mount. And of course, they would have to take a lot of the bones and a lot of that kind of garbage out of the city. Now, by the way, that gate that I just showed you, that's behind me, let me get my camera right, that's not the original gate from 2,000-3,000 years ago. This is the same wall that I mentioned out at our last talk, which was built by the Suleiman, the Ottoman Turkish Suleiman, the Magnificent, in the 16th century. However, our archaeologists believe that very, very close nearby in this proximity was the original Dung Gate, and that's mentioned in Nehemiah chapter 3, when the returnees came from exile. They came in 3 waves: Zerubbabel, Ezra, Nehemiah. And they went around repairing the walls, they went around repairing the gates, and they went around repairing the altars. And it mentions that it mentions the Dung Gate, and it also mentions the Potter's Gate. And why the Potter's Gate? Because a lot of pottery went on. That was one of the major trades in the area. And a lot of potsherds, which also have been found in the City of David, were also taken out of the city and thrown into a valley down there. And the valley is called the Valley of Hinnom. The Valley of Hinnom, and we can't see it here, I'm sorry, it's a bit far, but the Valley of Hinnom is not too far from here. And that is also found in the scriptures, where the Canaanites would offer up their children as a sacrifice to their God. Yeah, you might be able to see it on the screen there. There we go. You see, Jerusalem has 3 major valleys: the Kidron, the Central, or it's called in Greek, the Tyropean Valley, which means the cheesemakers valley, and the Hinnom Valley. There it is there, named after the family Ben Hinnom. And the Canaanites offered up their children to the god of fire, the god Molech. And this was not a shock in those days. This was part of the culture, in Abraham's day. This was the period of Abraham, 4000 BC. I'm sorry, 3000 BC. This is the late or the early Bronze Age. And so for Abraham to be asked to offer up his son wasn't really a shock to his system, because that was the culture of the day. The idea was that you would, or all sacrifice was like food for your God, a way to try and appease your God. And what better sacrifice could you give than the fruit of your loins, hoping, of course, that your God would be pleased and that you'd get something in return. And the rabbis say that when the angel stopped Abraham, this was a pivotal moment in history where the Lord Yahweh was highly elevating human life, human value. Because as I say, in those days, and if you look historically at how people treated and valued human life, it was extremely low, going the way from the Assyrians, through the Greeks, through the Roman periods. And this was a very important moment. That's why for Jewish people, they say to save one life is like saving a whole world. And of course, when we raise a glass, we say l'chaim, to life, because life and Moses, he said, I set before you death and life, blessing and curse. Choose life. So this is the most highest value in Judaism, and I guess in Christianity as well, which is quite interesting when you think of the New Testament story of God the Father offering up or sending his own son to become an offering, and he actually went the whole way. And it's quite amazing. And of course, there's a verse in the New Testament which says, greater love has no man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. And of course, in the Jewish world, sacrifice was not something barbaric or foreign. In those days, and of course, exactly where I'm standing, sacrifice was a major part of the world because of the temples, because of the tabernacle, because of Judaism, and even going right back to Abraham, where it says he built it an altar unto the Lord. So for Jewish people, sacrifice is nothing foreign. Now inside here, the Dung Gate, we have more a huge amount of archaeological remains. This is actually the southern wall of the Temple Mount. And when I say Temple Mount, up there where that gray dome is, that is actually called the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And that comes from the 6th century AD. Hang on, let me tilt my camera there. And so where that mosque is, along with the Golden Dome, that is the Temple Mount. And but that wall that you can see in front of you, that's built up on the remains of the original southern wall that King Herod built. King Herod, when he came to power in about 20 BC, he flattened off Zerubbabel's temple, which was up there. And that temple was the Solomonic rebuilt temple. He flattened it off, and he made 4 retaining walls and a platform called the Temple Mount. And then on top, he built the temple, which took about 3 or 4 years to build. But you can see these stones here in the wall. I can do a close-up just a second. Hang on, let me just move closer so it'll be a better view. Those stones right there, they are original Herodian stones. I think I might have there a little bit. No, I might have frozen. Sorry. Let me turn my camera around and get back on there. Yeah. So King Herod built this massive platform with 10,000 anointed priests to do the work. And I remember last tour, I showed you the place where they quarried the stones. Well, right here, right here this is part of the original Western Wall. Okay, and as I zoom in, there are some original stones, and the bottom layers, these are called Herodian stones. We know that because they have a special dressing around them. Herod put little kind of dressing, like a crease around the stones. I can't get, but I'll get closer up in a few minutes. But these are all remains, and you can see a number of rocks that were thrown down by the Romans from AD 70. We know that story from our one and only source, Josephus Flavius. He tells us not only the year, but the month and the day, the 9th day of Av, AD 70. We call it Tisha B'Av, and we commemorate that day. By the way, the first and the second temples were both destroyed on the same day. And it's a day that every year the Jewish people fast. So there's a whole lot of conglomerations and of artifacts. And down there also are a number of mikvaot. These are Jewish ritual baths, because what would happen is 3 times a year when Jewish people would come up to worship God at the temple at the 3 great feasts, that's during Passover, that's during Shavuot, and that's during Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. They would offer sacrifices, and before they offered the sacrifices, they would have to go and have a ritual purification, which is called a mikvah, and so our archaeologists have found literally dozens and dozens of mikvaot, ritual baths. We'd call them baptismal pools, but the original naming was that they were ritual immersion pools that you would cleanse yourself before you offered up a sacrifice. Now, I'm just going to go through some security here, so I might have to put my camera down for a few seconds. I probably will. שלום. אני יכול לעבור, אני עושה שידור חי. תודה רבה. He let me through, תודה. So here I come through the pretty intense security. So intense that he let me through without checking me. No, the guy knows me, so that's good. But we're coming into, and it says here on the billboard, although the writing's not the best, welcome to the Western Wall, remnant of the temple. And there's a verse from Psalm 2, Psalm 122. In some languages, it says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Here it says, request the welfare of Jerusalem. May those who love you enjoy tranquility. May there be peace within your wall and tranquility in your palaces. From Psalm 122, verses 6 and 7. So we're coming over to what's called the Western Wall Plaza. I'm going to try and turn my camera around. Okay, now it's working from sideways. Before, it wasn't working so good. And this is a plaza. This is
unfortunately it's still sideways for us, Aaron.
Oh, is it? Okay, so I will turn it back. Thank you.
Sorry
I
about
don't know
that.
why that is. No, let me turn that back. There we go. So we're in an open plaza here, and last tour, I went inside of the gate, and we were in the Muslim quarter, and I mentioned that there are 4 quarters in the old city: Muslim, Christian, Armenian, and we are in one of the quarters, the Jewish quarter. Okay, there's the Star of David flag there. That's our national flag. Oops. They have and those buildings behind, these are called yeshivot. They are what you would call theological seminaries for Jewish people from all around the world. They come and study Torah, they study Talmud, the Mishnah, all these buildings here. But the main feature here, of course, is this wall over here. And let me just get through so that we're, this thing is not in the way. By the way, there's a bridge here, and this bridge goes up onto the Temple Mount. People go and actually do a tour of the Temple Mount. Maybe one day we can do that as well. And we can talk maybe about the rebuilding of the temple, although maybe in our question and answer period later we can talk about that as well, because that's the hot topic here, really. But let me take you down to one of the most holy, probably the second most holiest site in the world for Jewish people, and that is the Western Wall. Western Wall also has another name. It's called the Wailing Wall. And that's because for centuries under Muslim rule, the Muslims allowed this tiny little section of the wall to remain open for the Jewish people to come and pray. And the Jewish people would come and they would pray and they would weep and mourn because the temple, there was no temple. For 2,000 years, we've been without a temple. And so that was one of the names. It still is called the Wailing Wall, but it's mainly called the Western Wall because this is the Western Wall of the Herodian Temple Mount, where King Herod built the platform. But over here, a group of Jewish people praying. And in Judaism, you need at least 10 people to have a formal prayer meeting. And that's based on the story where Abraham interceded for Sodom and Gomorrah. And there were 50, and then God said, Abraham said, if you can spare 50, 40, 30, 20, even if you can find 10 righteous men, would you spare the city? And God said, for 10 righteous men. So they need at least 10 people to hold a formal prayer meeting. And they've got, see the boxes on their arms and on their heads? These are called phylacteries. And they are mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 6, the most important verse in the Bible for Jewish people, which the Lord Jesus mentioned as well, the greatest commandment, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Teach these commandments to your children when you sit down and when you rise up. Bind these commandments on your arms and on your foreheads. And that's why they do that, everyone. And then it says, put these on your doorposts, and over every Jewish doorpost, you will see what's called a mezuzah. Anyway, there's the bridge up there to get up on the Temple Mount. It's called the Mughrabi Bridge. This area, another name, by the way, for that Dung Gate is called the Mughrabi Gate because a number of Muslims during the Ottoman period came from a place called Mughrabi and they settled in this area. But let me go now to the wall. We're right up at the wall. And let me just show you a few features. We know that these are Herodian stones. Like I mentioned, see the dressing around don't know if you can see me. Yeah, there's my finger. You can see the special dressing around the rims of the stone. That was a special touch that Herod made. The average stone is like 3 to 5 tons. I'm trying to just go back so you can get a better view. I don't know why my side camera is not showing up that it's working. But anyhow, the other thing is they stack them up and up and up and up. And let me see if I can get you a good, it's pretty high. That wall, you can see it's got different kinds of stones from different periods. This is not the original height. The original height was about 25 meters. And based on the scriptures, John 2:20, punch out a bigger view. Okay, let me see if I can. Yeah, that's about the best I can do for now. Anyhow, here's a side view of the wall. By the way, you'll see Jewish people bobbing back and forth when they pray. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says, the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. And so, like a candle flicker, it flickers. So the idea is by moving, bobbing back and forth like that, you're stirring up that candle. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, and you're stirring it up within yourself. Yes, based on John 2:20, when the Lord said, destroy this temple and I'll raise it up in 3 days. They said 46 years we've been building this, and you are going to raise it up in 3 days. And based on Josephus, it was completed in 62 AD. So if you do your math, it's about 75 years in all that it took to build the whole complex. But then in AD 70, only 8 years later, it was destroyed, sadly. And like I said, ever since, it's never been rebuilt. Now, inside here, and the western wall here, it continues to go right through. It goes. You can actually go underground and get to the other end of the wall where it comes out. It was opened up about 25 years ago under our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's called the Western Wall Tunnel Walk, and it's a great tour. It's today, of course, it's underground. Whoops, my skull cap blew off, it goes right under the Muslim quarter, under the Jewish quarter, and it comes out at the other end. And a whole lot of things that have been found over the years. But friends, the key to this site, of course, is the something that more and more is being talked about, and that is the rebuilding of a Jewish temple. And it's becoming more of a heated talk. I think we talked about it a little bit last time. At the moment, it's pretty empty here, but you can come at certain hours, and this whole plaza is just totally packed with people, especially during the festivals and during the seasons when the Kohanim, the priests, they come and they pray for the Aaronic blessing from Numbers chapter 6 over the Jewish people, and all the Jewish people come from all parts of the country. But 2,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago, Jews came from all around the world, from Antioch, from Alexandria, from Rome, all around, from the Galilee, from Tyre, where all these Jewish communities were, and they came to pray and they came to worship the Lord. And friends, like I said, this idea of the Jewish temple once again being rebuilt is a big topic. And what's interesting is one of the verses in and around that temple. And by the way, we've even found marketplaces where points to the story in the New Testament where Jesus overturned the tables. But one of the verses, it says, "My house will be a house of prayer for all nations." And more the Jewish people are recognizing that the temple has a larger vision, not just a Jewish vision, but a vision for people from all nations. And that even goes back to the promise given to Abraham when God said to Abraham, I will bless you, Abraham, and you will be a blessing. And through you, through your seed, Abraham, all the nations will be blessed. And so, again, there's an inclusion of not just the Jewish people, but the nations, the Gentiles as well. And I believe, 2,000 years ago, that was made possible with the coming of the Jewish Messiah. Yeshua is his Hebrew name. We call him Jesus. And about, 10 years or so after, even less, a few years, 3 to 5 years after, when the message of the Messiah started to spread, we have a story where up in Caesarea, a Gentile became a believer. His name was Cornelius. And then more and more Gentiles became believers. And now we have literally hundreds of millions of followers, Gentile followers of this Jewish Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus. The Jewish people today in general, they are waiting for a Messiah. They've looked for a Messiah. There have been many false Messiahs throughout generations. Today, they look at Jesus as a great historical man, one of us, even a great teacher, some people say. But there are more and more and more Jewish people who are saying and proclaiming that we believe that he is actually our Messiah and that he fulfilled all the messianic prophecies that were written in the Tanakh about him. And so I'm one of them, and I believe that we're going to see more and more Jewish people that are going to, turn and believe in him. And, this week's scripture reading from Genesis 50 is the story of Joseph, where he, remember the story of Joseph, where he was rejected by his brothers and he was thrown out, and his whole family thought he was dead. But the Almighty preserved him and raised him from that pit, raised him, so to speak, from the dead. And he was alive. And then the brothers, through circumstances, were forced to go to Joseph and bow down to Joseph, like Joseph dreamed. And then, of course, he revealed himself and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother." And I think that is kind of almost like a prototype of what we're going to see in the last days. The Jewish people, along with the Romans, crucified the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, 2,000 years ago. But based on historical records, he was seen walking around in this city for 40 days. And he ascended from the Mount of Olives and said he's coming back. And the scriptures say that when he comes back, it says, the Jewish people, will look upon me whom they have pierced. And it's going to be just like Joseph, when the brothers were in shock. They couldn't believe it. And he said, "Come closer." And they came closer, and that's what he said. And he said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good, and for the salvation of many." So we have that great picture. And so, guys, all of what's around here, and especially the Temple Mount, the theme of sacrifice, and it all happened here 2,000-3,000 years ago. The 12 tribes, the Israelites, Jesus, the disciples. There's so much. There's the story of the Gate Beautiful, where a man, he was lame and he was begging for alms, and one of the followers of Jesus, Peter, he looks over and he said, "Silver and gold I don't have, but what I have I say to you, in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, stand up and walk." And the man miraculously was healed. He stood up and walked. And they say he's the only man in history that was asking for arms, and he got legs. So thank you, everyone. I've come to the end. We don't have more time, and I'm sorry if I rushed through, but there was just so much information. But this is all in and around the Dung Gate. As I mentioned at the beginning, the Dung Gate, it's from the 16th century, the Dung Gate that's standing today. But a lot of the surrounding places, including the city of David, including the Temple Mount, including the Wailing Wall, that goes a lot further back. So stay tuned, because one of the special things about Jerusalem is not just about its past and not just its present, but its future, because the story is not over yet. Thank you.
Well, thanks for Aaron. That's fascinating. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves and ask any questions they might have. Again, please, if you've asked your question, could you just put your mute back on again? Otherwise, what happens is we get a lot of background noise. So once you're done asking a question, just remute yourself. Thanks very much. So is there any questions? If not, I might start if there's none out there. They're all stunned silence after that one. It's great that the weather's better today, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Makes your life a bit easier.
Yes.
Poor Aharon suffered last week from being out in the rain and ended up with a bit of a cold. So I'm glad that the weather's a bit nicer this time. So,
Hello.
right, I can hear someone there.
Sorry, this is Sharon here. Hello, Andy. I have a
Hey,
question.
Sharon.
Hi. I have a question. Is all of the old city stone? Because that's what I'm seeing so much of, stone, rock.
The answer is probably about 95% stone, yes, because the land here is just filled with stone and all kinds of stone. And that's actually that was promised to Joshua in Deuteronomy chapter 8, just before the Israelites were about to enter into the land after 40 years of wandering. The Lord said, Moses said, the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of pomegranates, figs, dates, wheat, barley, olives, honey, a land where you will dig rock out of the mountains and copper. And we've even found dozens of copper mines in the south, but stone absolutely everywhere here. And most of the stone that you can see, it's kind of a yellowy, browny. This is called limestone, and we actually have a name for it. We call it Jerusalem stone because it's quarried from the Jerusalem mountains. And in fact, it's so popular that many Jewish people that live overseas, they actually import it to their countries because there's something very special about it. When it's sunny, like right now, the sun's just come out as I said that. I timed that perfectly. It glares. One of the names of Jerusalem is Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold, because the sun, okay, it's gone behind the cloud a bit now, but it shines and it gets very blurry in the summer. But yeah, this is all limestone. Up in the north, you get a lot of basalt from because up there it was volcanic. Down in the south, you get a lot of granite. You get malachite stone, which is called the king's stone. All kinds of different rocks, but yeah, definitely, pretty much everything is made of stone. So, in those days, the days of Joshua and the Israelites, this was a great commodity to have because they could build houses, they could build walls for protection, they could build weapons. The Stone Age, they had weapons made of stone as well. And then, of course, they could trade it. So, and then, of course, when they got copper, they could do the same. But they didn't have iron, and that was the problem with why they couldn't defeat the Philistines in the Iron Age, because the Philistines, they were the only ones that had iron, but that's a different story. So anyway, that's just a little bit sharing on that.
We have a question.
Hello. You alluded to the fact that it wasn't just dung that went out through the Dung Gate. There was blood and offal and bone. Anything else special came out of that Dung Gate?
I mentioned also that one of the old names was called the Potsherd Gate. That's in Jeremiah 19:2, the Potsherd Gate. And that leads us to all the stories in the book of Jeremiah about the potter's house and everything. And maybe that potter's house was very nearby where we are right here. We don't know exactly where that potter's house was, but that's one of the names of the gate, of the original Dung Gate. So, and based on our archaeology, all the potsherd that has been found in this area, and that's why I guess you would call a gate the Potsherd Gate. So what else? I'm sure 3 times a year when, hundreds of thousands. In fact, during the Passover at the time of Jesus, Josephus Flavius reports that there were 2 million Jews in Jerusalem that would come up. Now think about what you would need to host 2 million tourists. Some people question whether Josephus exaggerated or not, although more and more our archaeologists are finding that he was pretty accurate. But 2 million people coming up during one of the feasts, you'd need, you need accommodation, marketplaces, you'd need food, all of that. So probably during these times, yeah, it was used for taking out a lot of garbage. Absolutely. Now, the other thing that I actually completely forgot to mention is one of the most important things here, and that's water. Right under our feet here, where I'm standing, is Jerusalem's main water source, which is called the Gihon Spring. The Gihon Spring, Gihon. And what's interesting, actually, if you go back to the story of creation in the book of Genesis, and it mentions the Garden of Eden, it actually mentions that 4 rivers went out from Eden, and one of the names of one of them is Gihon, the Gihon Spring. And so the ancient sages believe that where we are here is part of the original Garden of Eden, and it extends in this area. The rabbis also say that the Temple Mount is another name for it is called the foundation stone, because they believe that this is the place that God built creation on, the foundation here. That is just commentary, and you get a lot of that in the Talmud and the Mishnah, but we have a massive source of water under the city here, and it still flows today. If you come on a tour, you will go under some of those tunnels that I talked to you about, and you'll actually get to what's called a tunnel called Hezekiah's Tunnel. And that's mentioned in the book of Kings and the book of Isaiah, when Sennacherib, the Assyrian king in the 8th century BC, came to besiege the kingdom of Judah here. He'd already destroyed the 10 northern tribes, the kingdom of Israel, and he came, and King Hezekiah, it says he built a massive fortification wall around the city. And what he did is he built a tunnel under the ground. Well, he didn't do it. He just gave the orders. And what we did is we went outside of the city, outside of the walls, found the source of water and channeled the water under the ground so that the enemies couldn't find our water and couldn't get our water. And they said, why should the Assyrians drink from our water? And our archaeologists have found 4 of these water tunnels around the country, one at Beersheba, one at Hatzor, one here in Jerusalem, and the other one, I forgot, but there are 4. And you can actually walk as a tourist through Hezekiah's Tunnel. And when you come out at the pools of Bethesda, not pools of Bethesda, the pools of Siloam, the story in John chapter 9. So lots of water. By the way, and maybe some of you know this argument, but the city of David, which is the same place where the pools of Siloam are, there's a new theory come out in particularly the last 5 years, that down there in the city of David is where the temple stood. Okay. Some of you might have heard that or read books about it. I've read one book about it. Most of the top archaeologists throw that argument out as nonsense, but a lot of people are convinced. Some of the arguments are pretty impressive, but I don't really go for it. I'm not the expert, but I do pay attention to what the experts say. The problem is that some experts believe it could well be, but anyhow. So yeah, sorry, I'm being a bit long-winded. They took out potsherds. They took out, particularly during the Jewish feast, when lots of people came up here, garbage, junk, like any normal city, you'd have to take garbage out, and you would burn it in the Valley of Hinnom, where I mentioned the Canaanites offered up their children to the god of fire, Molech, but also it was that valley that constantly burned. And if you look in the New Testament, you will see many times, yeah, there's the picture again. Many times Jesus referred to hellfire and the lake of fire. And I'm pretty convinced, along with a lot of scholars, that he was using that valley as kind of like an audio visual for a place that the people's thirst will never be quenched. A kind of a Greek image of a place that, or Greco-Assyrian Israelite place where it constantly burns and you will be kind of eternally separated from God. So that's about that.
Aaron, I have a question. Can you hear me? It's Jane.
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, Jane. Hi.
Hi. It's kind of a tangential, but when you were walking around in the area in front of the Western Wall, you see a lot of these very modern, beautiful buildings with names on them, with, donated by X person, or, it's a Chabad group, etc. Who actually, yeah, that's one of them. Who has permission to live within the Jewish quarter? Because it's a very small quarter.
Right.
Can anybody, I suppose what I'm saying is, if I turned up tomorrow as a Jewish person and said, I want to live in the Jewish quarter and I've got X amount of shekels to be able to do it, am I allowed to do it? Or are there certain areas that are only dedicated for learning institutes or religious places? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if I fully know the answer to that, except to say, being such a small proximity area, it would be very limited. Well, number one, room is limited, and because room is limited, either, of course, anywhere money talks, but because probably every square inch, more or less, has been taken, I doubt if anything in the future, like if you were planning on something for the future, I don't think there's any room anymore. So that's about it. But in the past, how these places have taken over, my guess is, very wealthy Jewish people from overseas, and there are a lot of those, they have a vision to help Jewish people get educated, and so they sponsor. And what they do, see, a lot of these Jewish people, they make a huge amount of money, and now they've got nothing else to aim for in their life except a legacy. So what they do is they donate a few $1 million or whatever, and they get their name on a building, and that's part of their legacy. That's part of their the honor. And fair enough too. They will, that it's named after them. But how to go about it? I mean, taking aside the old city, there are still places all around Israel where that happens. For example, in residential areas, you'll get here's something that was interesting. I was walking in a city the other day. Actually, it was a town called Zikron Yaakov, and in the middle of nowhere, I stumbled across these stones, and on the stone, it had a name, David, someone I forgot, from Surfers Paradise, Australia. It's where my mother lives. And I'm like, how did this stone from, with the name Surfers Paradise, Australia, get dedicated here? So a man, he was walking past, and I stopped him and I said, excuse me, do you know anything about the stone? He says, oh, actually, I do. He said it was an Australian man, and he gave money to build this beautiful open air park for families, and he gets his name on a stone there. So, yeah. If people want to do that, great. If people want to give their money for that kind of thing, or if they want to give it for education or whatever. Something that happened about 50 years ago, a group of very wealthy American Jews and actually other areas of the world, they were concerned about Jews assimilating around the world, marrying out, not really interested in their Jewish heritage. So they started up a organization called, in Hebrew, it's called Taglit. In English, it's called Birthright. Maybe some of you have heard of it. What they do, all these Jewish businessmen, they donate a huge amount of money and they sponsor Jewish young people from all around the world to come on an all expenses paid trip to Israel. And the idea is to get you connected to your Jewish roots. And it's been going for about 50 years. And it yields an incredible amount of fruit, because a lot of Jewish people, they get here. Of course, some Jewish people, they get here and they just party. That's all they want to do. They just want to drink, go out, meet a girl or meet a guy, and they're not interested at all. In fact, one of those tours is a gay birthright tour, believe it or not. And they will go down to the Dead Sea, to Sodom and Gomorrah, that kind of tour. But the serious people, they go on these tours and they really get in touch with their Jewish roots. And they go back home and they say, I'm packing up and I'm immigrating to Israel, or I'm becoming a religious Jew. So, some of these buildings, Jane, that we've looked at and you mentioned, they bear a lot of fruit, because the other thing is that even a lot of Jewish people from overseas, they send their kids on a 3-month or 6-month or 1-month program where they come and they study in some of those buildings. And it's like Christian families, they'll send their kids to a theological school or a summer camp or something. Well, it's the same with some of these buildings. So, but as far as purchasing building rights and things like that in the old city, it's not easy because of shortage of room. But outside, like I said, if you've got money, anything can happen. And there are very, very prominent Christian leaders, people like John Hagee, and what's the other guy's name? He actually funded a museum in Jerusalem called the Friends of Zion Museum. What's his name?
Evans.
Mike Evans, thank you. Yes. So he's got money, he's got influence, and it's an incredible museum. And there are Christians as we speak. They, particularly from Latin America, they have a lot of money and they want to build, they want to do things like that. So if anyone's got any ideas and you've got money, let me know and we'll see what we can do.
Thanks for
Hi
the
there. It's
Hello,
Colin
Ron.
here. Just wondering, what's the speed limit in Jerusalem there? The reason why I ask, I saw a sign, a 37-kilometer speed sign there. Why 37?
Really?
Yes, you passed it just now.
Okay, no, I see it. No, that's not a speed limit. That is no, it's actually 3.7. And what it is, it's if you want to go through the Dung Gate, if you're a bus, you can only be 3.7 meters high.
Okay, had me there.
but in answer to your question, which is the answer is just as funny, because I don't think Israelis have a speed limit here in Israel. At least they drive that way. No, honestly, this morning it was wild. But no, I think it's similar to most places around the world. In residential areas in the cities, it's like 50 kilometers, more open roads, 80, and then more broader highways, 100, some 110.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this, I saw a lot of guys with the black hats on there, Now, where were they walking? Are they walking to work, or are they students, or what?
Yeah, a lot of them would be students who study all day in what's called a yeshiva. That's what they do. You see, this is a huge talk. It's a huge subject. And I'll give you the short version. Okay, it's a big topic. Probably out of the 7 million Jews that live in Israel, probably about 25% of them are religious. Now, when I say religious Jews, that's like saying, New Zealand is a Christian country. What does Christian mean? There are so many different streams and brands of Christian. They say in the United States there are 100 different Baptist denominations. Okay,
Wow.
so among religious Jews, you get conservative Jews, you get Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Hasidic, Lubavitch, all kinds of different streams, all kinds of different Jews. But those ones that you're talking about, they are pretty. I think in some ways you'd liken them to the Pharisees in the Second Temple period. Now, here's the thing. In the state of Israel since 1948, when David Ben-Gurion became the prime minister, it's compulsory for every man and every woman to be enlisted into the army. Okay, men 3 years, women 2 years. But if you're religious, you do not have to serve. Now, back in 1948, nobody had a real problem with that for religious purposes. However, today, a lot of the secular Jews who have sacrificed members of their family, their sons, their daughters, they don't like the fact that religious people don't have to serve in the military. Because not only do they don't serve, but our tax money pays for them to study in these yeshivas. They don't work. Now, do you know what the religious people say? They say, you don't understand. We are the front line soldiers. And you may ask, what do you mean? What are they talking about? If you look in the Bible, a lot of the battles that the Israelites went out to fight, who were the frontline soldiers? They were the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant. So they have a good biblical, scriptural argument, and it's very hard to argue with that. Of course, the secular Jews, they don't want to have anything to do with that argument. They just say that's nonsense. So now some religious Jewish people, they do serve. They say, no, I live here. I want to serve. Some who serve are ostracized from their family for doing so. I know some who have been ostracized. So it's a very hot topic. And, a few months ago when Netanyahu was still in government, his government was mainly religious. So it wasn't an issue. But now our new government, it's a little bit religious, but it's mostly secular. So it's become an issue again because the lefties, they want to make it compulsory. The problem is the rabbis have said, even if you make it compulsory, we ain't gonna serve. And so you know what they say? They say, well, then we'll do to you what we do to any other deserter. We'll throw you in prison. So you know what the religious say? They say, bring it on. Throw us in prison, but you got to find the room for the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of us. So the left wingers, they say, okay, well, they've got a good argument there. So, okay, we'll hit you where it hurts. We will take away your monthly stipends to support you. And you know what the religious say? They say, bring it on. We've got relatives from all around the world who are wealthy Jews. I mentioned that earlier. They will support us. We don't care. See, they believe that they are doing a holy service to God. This is where state and religion clashes. And it's a big one here. And our ex Israel the governor of the Bank of Israel, Stanley Fisher, he said, if we continue on this path, it could cripple the economy. And I don't understand economics good enough. Maybe Simon or Jane they can give you a take on that. But anyhow, how the state of Israel operates and works, and they actually say that Israel's economy is very good. I don't know. It's a miracle. It's one of those modern day miracles. Guys, if you read the Bible today and the history of the modern state of Israel was in the Bible, it wouldn't shock you, because the stories of, against the odds and everything, 1948, 1967, and just how we're not only surviving, but we're thriving. It's a miracle. It's hard work. Yes, there's been a lot of bloodshed, but you cannot deny the invisible hand of God is right over this nation. That's what I believe anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Welcome.
Maybe this one, if there are any more questions, it's fine. Just maybe make this the last one.
Ron Peterson, regarding the land, if people want to build there, the land, do they lease the land off the state? What is the situation with it?
There are a number of different ways. That is one way you can do it. You can buy the land. You can lease the land off the state. Usually that happens if you are a farmer. If you don't want to buy the land outrightly, you can do that. It's like a co-op, a cooperative movement with the government. Like, for example, if there's an area way out in the middle of the desert that belongs to the government, you and a dozen of your friends, you've got a bit of money in your pocket, and you've got an idea. You go along to the government, you say, and you present it, and you say, we want to grow watermelons or sunflowers with sunflower seeds and oil, whatever. We want to do it. We submit the plan. You can either buy the land if the government will sell it, or you can lease it. As far as purchasing property, you buy the land and you buy, and then you build on that land. But there are some areas where there is state housing as well.
Great. Well, thanks for those questions and answers, folks. It was really good. So we're going to wind it up now, and I'm going to just read a short passage. And before I do, just remind everyone, the next session is scheduled for the 12th of January, so Wednesday again, 7:30 New Zealand time, 12th of January. Now, in that session, we're going to be looking at the new gate. Of course, in terms of New Zealand, that would still be an ancient gate, but for Jerusalem, apparently it's a new gate. And so with that in mind, thinking about gates, I just wanted to finish with a psalm. Psalm 24, verses 7 to 10 says, "Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in." Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Selah. Well, that concludes our second in the series, The Gates of Jerusalem. Thank you, Aharon. We will be sticking around just informally, but I'm going to be concluding the recording and so on at this point. And so thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you. And so shalom and good night to all of those participating. Thank you. Great.